Alright, let's start off with some groundwork here. I am not decrying protesting Sony overall here. I do believe voting with your wallet is paramount to holding a company responsible, and if done right, is an effective way to communicate to a company that their actions are wrong. I am still the voice of the consumer. More on that in a bit. Next, just because I express extreme contempt for a viewpoint does not mean I hold contempt for the baka behind it. I believe wholeheartedly in fighting and dying for your right to speak a different opinion than mine. When I say things like stay in your lane or don't operate outside of your caste, it is not an invalidation of yourself as a whole. It is the principle that only experts should profess opinions on a topic. The biggest ills of modern society come from idiots who know nothing of what they're talking about. I respect the expertise of others, and if you are a businessman and have a contrary opinion and can bring up productive discussion instead of mindless whataboutisms, how should be's, undeserved morals, and ad hominem, I am more than willing. Next, I am a person who has been doing this politics thing for 18 years, business for 6, watching anime for 20 years, and nepping for 4. I therefore reserve the right to profess expertise in this subject matter as a hardcore journeyman, and even more, I earned my voice in the Neptunia community after I spent thousands of my hours dedicated to platinuming the Neptunia franchise of PSN of my entire life. That being said, my PSN name is Dead4346 if you wish to have the proof. Last but not least, an admission and an apology from myself to other Net fans. I was wrong. Even if my copy of the game miraculously does not have your censorship problems, it is unavoidable to admit the fact that some people do have their copy censored, which is indeed a shame. I was wrong in that regard. Then again, while I am sorry for the conflict brought to the forefront, I could also argue that Neptunia kind of had it coming for a long time, since they constantly tried their luck on stretching their luck on the T rating. To me, V2 should have been rated M in my opinion. Keep in mind one thing as we get underway. No matter if censorship happens or not, hysteria is not the answer. People getting pissed off about censorship without knowing what censorship truly is only furthers and indulges the SJWs everywhere. The same SJWs who oppose your rights as a consumer. You validate them by giving them the example that the opposing side is too emotionally unstable, giving them a justification for their actions. Starting off, what is the common misconception people have with censorship? Also, yes, this misconception does exist. Simple. They think all forms of censorship are bad. However, these are the same kinds of people with zero education as to business practices, and why censorship is a valid and vital process of making said artistic content marketable to the highest audience possible. Today I'm going to be laying out the truth in as much as volume as absolutely possible. Okay, first and foremost, the entire premise on this video will be the very super nep RPG, a game I really enjoy for countless reasons. Albeit, I'm sure if you figured this out by now, since the background video will be super nep RPG anyways. Today is going to be a small bit of education. We're going to talk about tasteful censorship and distasteful censorship. One is a very understandable, very common practice even amongst the most fan-servicey games like Neptunia and Censorship, both of which need to be censored in some fashion before being publicly marketable. As without said censorship, both would be rated adults only or AL and ESRB standards, of which we'll be judging by. So I do apologize Peggy and Sarah users, as well as people who use any other form of games rating systems. The common misconception about such call to arms when regarding censorship is what people protest. Tasteful censorship is done in minimalistic quantities. Generally as bare minimum as possible so that their game can be advertisable. As I'm sure what you're thinking right now, what do advertisers and ratings matter? What is the ethos and pathos behind it all? Easy. They exist so audiences of all demographics can enjoy their content. There's good art, there's bad art, and there's marketable art. Well, the people making games or anime, the only form of art that matters is the final one, marketable art. Companies are willing to put out shitty projects and products so long as it is money-making, usually done in form by franchising, as making a bad game for your first shot just ruins the money-making machine you could get. It is always about best product plus as little effort possible equals the most money. I hate to be a broken record, but mobile games are the ultimate minimalist business art. How does this look back? Rather simple. Since ratings exist because the government has to step in where the parents don't want to put in effort, and advertisers wouldn't want too raunchy of art exposure for the sake of maximizing their own different demographics, creators themselves have to go up, above, and beyond to censor it so long as to make the most out of the demographic they can with the content. The major reason why they turned Rebirth 2 downwards from their Mark II counterpart is indeed the rating system. If you constantly produce M-rated content, you're always going to limit your audience even further. The method is simple. The lower your rating equals the wider of an audience you appeal to. This was how Nintendo remained so dominant over the years, or when in their worst times, constantly managed to scrape by. They made content as wide of an appeal as possible to the maximum demographic. As such, since the limit of Neptunia content will always be a 2 rating, Idea Factory Compile Art and Idea Factory International will always have some form of censorship involved to keep such ratings. But wait, doesn't this mean that protesting censorship is wrong? Yes and no. Yes, because of several factors, but no, because of a few concepts as well. I'll start off with the no's. As a theory, protesting censorship by not buying the content made is actually a pretty understandable and sometimes even intelligent and civil act by the consumer to hold the company in check. Voting with your wallets is far better than violence or demanding legislative crackdowns. It is even understandable to protest censorship as a wholesome one. Here's where the yes part comes in. First and foremost, it is hypocritical under a few circumstances, such as when you're not hurting the company responsible for your grievances. On the example SuperNet RPG alone, protesting any form of game is not in any way, shape, or form punishing Sony, unless, of course, you buy directly from the Japanese PlayStation Network store. While I can understand Japan not buying from the PlayStation Network store, it is first and foremost because Japan actually has that specific branch of markets themselves. The only people who are foreign buy from the Japanese PSN stores are the people who do the whole thing on account of business, impatience, or the inability to use third-party retailers. Many YouTubers buy from PSN Japan because they don't wish to wait for shipping time and just to cut through the competitors. Otherwise, those out of Japan don't get access normally, mostly buy from third-party retailers like PlayStation. These same players are the ones protesting for the most part. Japan mostly doesn't buy SuperNet RPG because they don't know what a good Neptunia game is if it were in front of their eyes, as demonstrated by the vast selling dichotomy between SuperNet RPG, which sold much less despite being a much better game, and Four Goddesses Online, which sold much more despite being a terrible game. Don't give me argumentum ad populum as an argument in regards to what I just said, it is flimsy. So Japan has every right not to buy since their money goes directly to Sony. However, the people I call out on this are the people who buy it from third-party retailers because the only company truly punished by these protests outside of Japan and from, protesting the third-party retailers they buy from are artisan studios. The line of profit margin distribution exists of the following. First, third-party retailers. Second, the carriers and mail deliverers. 3, any form of foreign customs. And 4, last but not least, the actual developers. Specifically in that order, if I remember correctly. If you've noticed Sony not being on that list, congratulations on being some of the first to notice such an oxymoronic discrepancy. It then goes without saying that the people who do these kinds of protests have no moral ground to stand on in the first case of acceptable protest, since they're actually harming a company whose product they like. If you didn't actually like the game you bought and decided to return it and refund your money, that's more than fine. You're not the target problem here, and are therefore outside of the problem. I'm talking specifically those who will refuse to buy because they're uninformed views on censorship. Here's where the second case of moral high ground has no legs. People don't know what is the difference between tasteful and what is obscene in censorship. This is the crux of my issue with those who protest Super Nep RPG, specifically on the issue of censorship. There's a discrepancy called subjective censorship critique, where the dangers of one's own view of censorship affects the market overall. It is why the prevailing general view of censorship is bad is considered acceptable, despite its clear hypocrisy and disingenuousness. It is just far easier to treat one's morals as cliches, rather than get into the nitty-gritty of actually doing your research. The dangers of subjective censorship critique is the very fact that what one considers tasteful may not be the same for another. It is why those tasked with the job of censoring have a second reason for doing the job. Minimalism is the ultimate form of pandering to a wide audience. They want to censor as little as possible to maximize profits, as much as possible under censorship. They know that a corrupt, entitled fanbase who gets spoiled will leave their company in droves if there's even one hint of distasteful, obscene censorship. There's a scene in V2 that highlights my point. Well, technically multiple, but to keep things simple, we'll cite the bathing scene with the empty oil drum. That's an example of tasteful censorship. It is perfectly understandable to make the hair and water censor their private parts. The problem people have isn't the censorship as a concept. It is because they consider the censorship distasteful. Nay, even if the censorship was tasteful, as I consider it to be, they would still protest because they have another discrepancy called mean morality, where their own protests are about anti-SJWism. Since they're nowhere near understanding of any political climate, the only source of their pseudo-morals are in fact just political memes. So in theory, possibly in actuality, they're protesting censorship because the memes tell them to. After all, why bother doing research or self-contemplation when it is just easier to protest them? As when the examples of censorship showed, there's just a few light bars shown in one picture and a crop in another. I fail to see the problem when the actual Neptunia anime itself had light bars covering them in the R18 scene, and were so self-aware of its own censorship that it made the censorship enhance the show. And the only thing about Vert's gamer scene that was censored was a crop. I'll give you a moment to collectively facepalm over the stupidity of such a concept. Plus, there's possibly a bigger scene going on here besides Soyny anyways. It could very well be a mass advertising problem, which would be entirely massive in scale, one possibly greater than the economic market, which the consumers alone would be able to do absolutely nothing about. So, really botching the I even have an article I found that indicates that, one from a certain producer of Senran Kagura to corroborate. Make sure to let me know if you wish for it to be in the description or pinned in the comments section. In the end, the first step to showing the censors we're the better side is to show knowledge, comprehension, dignity, and sanity. First things first. Demonstrate your knowledge and comprehension by ceasing protests against censorships of certain games like Super Net RPG. I'm not saying, mind you, cease together on all games. But that ties into the second part known as dignity. Do your best to hurt the company that is actually responsible for your grievances. Artisan Studios did nothing wrong. You can't really hurt Soyny unless you actually affect their profit margin. Last but not least, develop some sanity by showing communications with the companies you actually like. A fellow Neptunia fan actually gave a good suggestion that I think should be done. Since Artisan Studios is so wonderful of a company that they'll even communicate to me, why don't you all show the dignity and sanity that the JRPG visual novel and fan service fan base has the potential to have and take Thungeon's idea, instead of harming the creator of the video game, which was a wonderful product. Thank you, Artisan Studios. I request either one or both of these things. First, a censorship removal patch. If Artisan Studios is willing to patch their games to fix glitch and mechanics issues, I'm sure they'll consider it if the fans asking great enough volume. Second, if nothing else, ask for exclusive DLC. Normally I believe in a complete product, but in this case I make an exception because I believe in supporting the consumer first and foremost, but this could be an opportunity for you to contribute to the company you like and still ignore the actions of Soyny. Making these fair requests not only helps you get what you like, it also makes SJW perception look like perpetrators rather than justified anti-heroes, which is what this unfounded protest brings. You're currently losing the culture war while feeding SJW victim stance fallacy with your current actions. Actions that, while understandable in your own fears, nonetheless only exist because your own mass hysteria is so hyperbolic that your hysteria recycles. You're giving them more ammunition than helping your cause. After all, you're victimizing innocent companies nor hurting the perpetrators, all in the name of omitting details. By no means am I saying the ideology of protest is bad, but do so when you actually have the moral high ground. Sanity is our only means of fighting the SJW plague, because the more we seem unreasonable and unprofessional, the more the falsehoods are justified. It is only if Artisan Studios takes a non-consumer friendly stance should we truly refuse to give them any money. However, I believe in both Artisan Studios' goodwill and intelligence to see the opportunity before them to lead the way while satisfying fans on all consoles, maximizing both profit and consumer satisfaction. Well, I think I covered mostly everything that was needed to be said in this video. I feel like I've often gone overboard and overkill in 2018. One of my 2019 goals, alongside more fan connectivity, is refining my craft even further while adding value to my brand of entertainment and reviews. So if you liked this video, or found it educational and helpful, like the video and share the information around the web. If you are watching this for the first time and like either myself or my content, consider subscribing and clicking the bell for more of my content. I am constantly working to improve myself in many ways, and I am working on a way to get monetized on YouTube despite Susan Washicki and YouTube admins hell-bent on not allowing me to make a living off of this site. Please watch my videos to the end for the end cards. I have a lot of content on my channel, and this will be released in a massive batch of video files when I get my modem back. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Harsh though I may be, I am also fair, as I hope my admission of earlier wrongdoing has demonstrated. Consider following me on Twitch at OneManCast. Let's get the requirements for affiliate with the 3 viewer average for streams. Follow me on Periscope at OneManCast, Mixer Bloody Renaissance, and Twitter at OneManCast346. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I am one man. Oya Samidasai.